Ho ho ho, listening people!
Oh ho ho there.
Ho 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 there! How are you doing, strange voice in the ether?
I'm doing well, other strange voice in the ether. How are you?
Oh, I'm sick and bloody
Oh,
tired
damn.
of these damn naughty children who don't wash behind their ears and they swear. Pfft. Back in my day, we never did things like that. It's this new generation of Finnish children that I can't stand.
You're also another adjective. That adjective being Ryan.
Yes, everyone's favorite adjective, right next to everyone's favorite verb, Bartek. That's you.
Everyone do the Bartek.
Do the Bartek. It's illegal in some countries, but you're allowed to
Not
do
Finland.
it here. Not Finland. Well, not Finland, especially not Poland, because we are spit and polish likingly because we're always spitting, and we both happen to be Polish gentlemen. And on our podcast, we talk about movies that come recommended, and we are nearing the end of the year. This will most likely be the last episode of the year, and what a way to go out on, because we're talking about a holiday film. Yes, it's that Christmassy time of year, and we always like to pick a holiday film, and with Pictures Powwow, we talk about those movies that come recommended, and the cycle of recommendations goes Bartek, myself, and then you, the listening people, and as is tradition, it's Bartek's time. Bartek's the one responsible for the movie of the season. And what
the Christmas cycle is me, you, me, listening people, me, then me again.
Then you again. What a way to go. And you make a stipulation on yourself as well with your recommendations overall, don't you?
I do.
Mm-hmm.
I do. It was a challenge I put. It's a challenge I put on myself, and it has challenged me. Yes, because obviously we live in the Western world. Most of the films that we get that we can very easily see are Hollywood films. So I try to do it where one time where it's my cycle of recommendation, I'll do a Hollywood film, and then the next I will do something that Hollywood had nothing to do with. And it's fallen on me this time where I have to pick a film that Hollywood had nothing to do with.
As it did last time. Last Christmas.
Yes, we had a repeat of last year where not only was it my turn again to recommend a Christmas film, but it was also a non-Hollywood one.
And thankfully this time you picked a Finnish horror comedy family Christmas movie. It's spooky, it's scary. And oh, it's so scary that we can't record in the same room this time. Oh, it's so scary. Bartek couldn't leave his house. He had his knees all the way tucked over his head. He was just that frightened of the pick that he gave us. And what movie is this, Bartek? What is the film that I am building up to be one so terrifying that it makes your bones turn to ice?
Yes, well, because I'm flattered by the fact that Finland is allowed to Bartek, I decided to go with a Finnish film, and that film is Rare Exports: A Christmas Tale from 2010.
Or just rare exports. It depends where you are. What's the Finnish title, I wonder? I didn't look it up. I don't know if you have the technology, the bar technology to look it up, but this is, as you said, from 2010 or 2010, if you want to be precise. And this is a horror comedy film about a father and son living in Finland and this small community that are getting terrorized in very subtle and quiet ways by some what could be supernatural happenings. The mountain that looms over this small community has been dug into by some tycoon who's wanting to benefit himself by capturing and selling and using and abusing some creature that's been locked up in that mountain many, many moons ago. What creature is that? Well, if you don't know Rare Exports, you should go and watch it for yourself because we'll get in details, but I can say, and this is this is the major selling point of the movie. This is a Santa is a monster type Christmas story. It's Krampus. It's the Finnish story. It even says at a portion in the movie that this is a story from people who brought you Santa Claus. And although it is very much marketed as the Santa Claus is a monster film, it is very different to what that premise sells you. So please go watch this for yourself if you do not want to be spoiled on things, but it is something worth checking out for sure. Wouldn't you say, Bartek?
Oh, it definitely is, yeah. Based on my very light research, I couldn't find a Finnish title, but considering the fact that this film is partially in English and we see, at the end of the film a sort of visual title drop, maybe it just is an English title.
Some characters do speak English in this film.
Mm-hmm.
Quite a number, in fact, but not our two mains, really. But Rare Exports, A Christmas Tale. I was aware of this movie when you pitched it. It was quite the meme back in the day, I would say. The trailer got around. Just the premise of it was very infamous. People were joking about this is one of those films that did have success. It has garnered an audience, but in my views, it was a film that people were excited about and talked about, but did not go out and watch. I didn't really know many people who actively watched this. I knew more people who talked about it, and we've both had that experience where we've had colleagues of ours, even guests on this podcast, talk about these crazy, wacky movies that they themselves will never ever watch. And this was the case with Rare Exports, and I never was drawn to checking it out. I saw the trailers on DVDs back in the day. Remember when you bought DVDs and they had the little promos, little trailers, little short things for other movies, and you would have to suffer through those DVDs that wouldn't let you fast forward through them, wouldn't let you chapter select skip over them. And this was one of those, and I never had any reason for not wanting to see it. It just did not look appealing to me enough. It looked sweet. I'm like, oh, okay, cute. Like, that's a cute little idea. And I never went beyond that. So when you recommended it, I had a warm feeling, because it has loomed over me over the decade plus, and I was positive walking into this. I didn't go out of my way to see it back in the day, and I never was really planning on doing so, but it was a case I was telling my sister about this, because my sister has seen this movie. I said, Rare Exports is going to be one of those movies where I'll only watch it if somebody else wants to watch it, and I won't object. Like, there's no animosity there. It's just one that I'm not going to download or buy or stream myself. But Bartek, what about you? You're the one who recommended this film, so tell us a bit about your familiarity or lack thereof, or if you've seen this before or you haven't, let us know.
No, it's very much the lack thereof. I hadn't heard of this film. I don't recall anything from around 2010, anyone talking about it or seeing the trailers or anything like that. This really was just a case of me looking up, Christmas films from whatever country came to my head, and the second thing I tried was, what about Scandinavia? Any Scandinavian Christmas films? And this was the one that kept popping up, basically. Rare Exports, A Christmas Tale. It seemed like multiple people really liked it. There were a couple of articles listing here a bunch of good Christmas films to watch, and this one was on a couple of them. It seems like it's very popular in Finland. Yes. It was made. Yep. It's beloved, from what I recall. I did this research almost a month ago now, so it's not quite fresh in my head.
An Australian actor claims it's one of her favorite films.
That was a recurring trivia point about Kate Blanchett.
I want to hear that from her mouth. I want to hear her say this. I have only seen it written down. I want to hear her explain. and just I want to hear her go in depth about this movie. I respect Cate Blanchett as a performer and as an artist, so I would really love to hear her opinions. And that's not me saying that I disagree. It's just she's someone that many people would associate as a very artsy, high class, very prestigious performer. So to hear the idea that she's into this film in such a way is something that makes me raise my eyebrows, because this film is a goofy little treat. It's got the little creepies and the crawlies. It's a little spooky, but overall, it's a silly. It's a silly outlet, and I just really would love to hear Cate Blanchett espouse upon this some more. But you were saying you did some research for this because you knew that you were the one responsible for the Christmas recommendation this year, and this was just what met your criteria.
Yeah, and to call back to what I said before, last year I did also a non-Hollywood Christmas film, and I'm pretty sure if you go back and listen to that episode, I talk about what a saga it was just trying to pick something, because I went through so many different candidates where I was rejecting things because oh, okay, apparently this is trash tier in this country that it's from, or I couldn't track it down. I wanted to see if I could do a Polish Christmas film, but I couldn't track any down. There were so many ones that's oh, this sounds interesting, but no, apparently it's really bad. And then I eventually stumbled upon the film that we did that year, Santa Claus is a Stinker, and it ended up being a pretty good episode that we did on it, so a pretty good film to watch. So I was just anticipating that this was going to happen again, and I just wanted to really lock something in early. So after I locked this one in, I didn't really look up anything else. I thought it seemed relatively safe slam dunk, we could track down copies of it and subtitles. It seems to be beloved, so yeah, it just seemed like a really easy thing to do. And next year I won't be doing it again. Let's see, maybe. Who knows?
Don't jinx it.
Sometimes it's fun to jinx it.
For yourself, at least, did you remember when you sat down to watch it for the pod? Did you know deeply what you were in for with the film? Because you had to do all of this research, you had to stack things up, and does that mean you were aware of what the plot was or what this could be about?
I knew the genres of it, which was action, horror, black comedy kind of thing. And I did remember reading, there's someone quoted an early part of the film where it's this isn't the Coca-Cola Santa Claus. So I did know that it's something about, Santa Claus being the killer.
Uh-huh. All right. Now, yeah, this was very different to what I had imagined it to be. Because, as I stated, I do have a history with this, but history with it was not involving seeing it. And the trailers for it and just a general word of mouth and even some of the posters sell you a movie that isn't really here. And this is very reminiscent to me of something like a cheaper, what you often see in cheaper sci-fi horror films, where they lure you in with a rather enticing premise and or character, and then you have to spend the majority of the film with a bunch of people walking around in the woods or in the snow in this case, and you pad the time with that stuff. And I don't say that as a negative criticism of this movie, but it did very much follow that formula. And I was perfectly fine with it in this case, but it did have a lot of the trappings of lower budget filmmaking within genre settings that I have become very, very aware of. And I was wondering what the reaction to this was to those people who were wanting that outrageous movie, because this was in an era roughly around the same time we would later get the hype for something like Sharknado and all of that, or even years earlier we had Snakes on a Plane. And the thing about those movies is they're very similar as well, where it's like you're sold on this ludicrously fun premise, but then they're very dry, and then you get their spurts of absurdity. While Rare Exports, it plays it straight the entire time. There are jokes, of course, but the jokes stem not from just the creative team behind this saying this would be wacky. It more stems from the characters are just out of their element. And what this film, like, what really made me think of is Tremors. I thought of Tremors a lot during this, in which you have a small community and they've stumbled across some entity that's totally unknown to them, that's picking them off one by one, and they have to band together and form a plan and get out of there. And also capitalize off of it, because also that's a thing in this movie too, is capitalism and profit, and Christmas is this hollow facade. And I thought about Tremors in that way a lot. Now, Tremors, I think, is a far more cohesive movie, but just the general vibe and essence was in tandem with one another. So what did you think of Rare Exports? Now, you had all of this struggle picking a movie, so were you happy with what you got?
It was an interesting one. I felt like I was trying to keep up with the film most of the way through. Like, I had heard that, this was a black comedy. Um, I guess I wasn't expecting so much and I don't know why I wasn't expecting this, but like the sort of mystery element to it, where like you're comparing it to Tremors there, where it's this community of hunters have stumbled across, this gigantic half conspiracy, half like a native creature that has been somewhat forgotten. And I felt like for most of it, I was just trying to follow along with all of the lore and backstory of the creature. Like, we learn that the thing that they've got in front of them isn't actually Santa Claus. It's something that's in a way a part of him. And then I remember by the end of the film, I did have it all together. And I kind of had this feeling of, I kind of wanted to watch the film again, knowing what I already know at the end of the film, so that I could kind of appreciate it again in a proper way. Because for most of the film, knowing it was a black comedy, I was watching a lot of it and not knowing if what I was watching was supposed to be funny or not. Like, we have a lot of scenes with our main characters, a little boy and his dad, and
real life father and son.
Real life father and son. Yeah, that was an interesting trivia point to read. And a lot of their scenes together are very kind of dry and cold. And while watching it, I was kind of looking at it on a surface level of like, oh, this is like some family drama going on here. Like, oh, the wife there was a wife in the past who died, a mother who had died. And clearly there is some tension between them. And I was watching it like, oh, this is like a drama that's unfolding. But then eventually you get to the point where like the kid who has spent the whole film, being told to just stay there, don't move, just stay, don't do anything, has suddenly like taken over the plot. And you get all these like, family film camera angles and music happening, and those moments hit me like, oh shit, I think I was watching the film wrong. Which in a way was a really good experience.
Because what's great about Rare Exports is we know, even if you haven't seen the marketing, and there's still the mystery, as you say, like the way that they examine and dole out and tell us the mythos of Santa Claus is unique and different, especially from people who are not from Finland. The movie makes a point that this is like a Finnish tale, and yet it's still giving us all of the different minutiae. But the brilliant part is the opening credits is our main character, the small boy, realizing what the creature is. Immediately. So then the rest of the movie is this mixture of us slowly learning more about it, but also getting angered and annoyed at the adults not listening to the child because he knows exactly what it is, and they're not going to listen to him because he's just a child and or he's just lesser than. And when you get to that magnificent moment you're talking about where the adults have to finally pay attention to the child, it becomes the Spielberg movie that it was trying to be the whole time. But leading up to that, it's your typical like European mystery thriller film with a child in it. But there was this war within the movie, deliberately so. This is not by mistake. There's a war of two films at the same time, of like your typical European mystery horror film and your Spielbergian wonderful kids movie thing happening, like your Goonies or your E.T., like that era of American filmmaking, and they were clashing with each other, and then you finally get to have one take over, and that's where the comedy kind of gets to be really highlighted because it is absurd. It is truly absurd, but one of the things that I wanted to mention is, as did already, is it's about this father-son dynamic, and they played by a real-life father and son, and I really liked how non-Hollywood it is. You go out of your way to pick non-Hollywood movies, and outside of just the obvious, this is not made by the Hollywood system, what does that statement mean? What does that mean outside of that? And we have had that conversation many times, like when we cover a Bollywood movie, what are the values that you often see bestowed upon their films? We talk about that. Or when we do Australian movies, what are the cultural values that you see in our films? And I don't know too much about Finnish culture, but to just go over like that father-son dynamic, it's non-schmaltzy Hollywood stuff. It's not as clear-cut a case of your typical 1980s, oh, my dad isn't listening to me portrayal. It doesn't have that schmaltziness to it. In fact, the way the child is treated is very flatly. It's not even like angrily or coldly. It's just very matter of fact. And I really bought into them being an actual father and son. I didn't know until after the movie, when I saw the credits or when I looked it up, that they're really a father and son. But I felt the genuine connection because the movie was portraying a relationship that I've seen in real life before, whether it is between myself and my father or friends around me, where it's not always the Hollywood portrayal, it's not always the Spielbergian vision of things. And I just really was won over by that. I could give less of a shit, honestly, about the Santa Claus mythos. That's nice and all, but I really just like spending time with this little boy and his dad who's a butcher.
Yeah, and the film, I know what you mean by the whole Hollywood thing, because in the past 3 episodes that we did, like the one last week with Last of the Mohicans and the last one I recommended, Apt Pupil, we did talk about Hollywoodisms, how these are Hollywood films, but what would these films be like with a different lens? Like with Apt Pupil, we were comparing it to European sensibilities. And last week we were talking about Last of the Mohicans compared to like The Nightingale, an Australian film. And it's like, oh, these films did it a little bit differently. Doesn't have that sort of, very upbeat Hollywood highlighting of little relationship things like that. Like with this one, we begin the film we don't begin the film with the kid and the father. But when we do get the first scene with them, it is just this very kind of esoteric thing of like, oh, he's fallen asleep upstairs in the attic with his Christmas sweater and just in his underwear, and his father's outside doing a bunch of like really labor intensive work, and just the dynamic between them doesn't feel like any sort of typical American family film structure. They've got this just very esoteric, like the rules, you come in here, you have to close your eyes, and it is all just very weird and maybe not typical to our sensibilities.
But it's also, we can relate if you are aware of rural living, because what the dad is doing is he's securing their property. He's putting down traps. He's laying down defenses because, well, in their case, it's wolves. But if you're someone who grew up on maybe farmland, or you recognize what that is, you can see what that means. And then you can understand why the father and son have a almost workman-like relationship, because that's kind of what you have to do when you're in that environment. Now, we are thrown into the snowy mountaintops of Finland for this, but as someone sitting here in Australia, which that's drastically different from, I can still relate to it.
No, and that's exactly the point that I was leading into. It is, well, for some people, for me it was, for some people this is unusual, but seeing it played out in front of us matter-of-factly, you buy into it. Like, this is the dynamic that these two characters have, and this is sort of the tone that you're going to see develop going forward throughout the film.
I really was appreciative of the little details, such as the kid who lives in this freezing environment, sleeps just with no pants on, and he walks around with just in his underwear and his shirt and his tops and his shoes and all of that, and he's not freezing. He's just perfectly fine, because this is where they are. They know, they just are accustomed to this, are acclimatized to it, and it was a great offset too, because the actual opening of the movie, is a Hammer House horror movie. It's very schlocky. It's very over the top. You have this villainous character who is the man in charge of the operation on the mountain, who has these really striking eyes. He has these really intense little beady eyes, and for a split second I was like, oh, is that Udo Kier? Because Udo Kier is one of those actors that you would get for this role, but it's not Udo Kier. But you have that opening where it's very much like a schlock film, like a throwback. Here's the setup, here's the intense monster thing we're going to have to deal with. And the children are watching it, and they're in on it, and they're afraid. And then you go back to the family life, and the family life is reminiscent of the real world, with some specific touches, as we've just gone through. And I just want to say that the family aspect goes not only just to the father and son in real life, but the director and writer of this movie is the actor who plays the father. It's his brother-in-law, the brother-in-law of him. So his wife's brother wrote and directed this movie, and this family have had an ongoing relationship, making and creating movies together. They have their own little Finnish empire. Isn't that cute?
Right. Okay, so that's the kid's uncle then.
Yes, the kid's uncle. But the dad in this film, he was he's obviously been around for a while, and so him and the director of this worked on a short for Rare Exports back in 2002, 2003. It's like 4 minutes long, and the premise of it is, from IMDb, is it's about three hunters who stumble across Santa Claus, and you can see that short in this movie when they are prodding what they think is Santa Claus, like the three goofy guys.
Yeah, so this is like an adaptation of that short to feature length.
It's kind of like how exactly. It's like how the Babadook, for instance, was a 6-minute short that was then made into a feature film by the same people and had some of the same people involved in it. But that's the case here. And then after this movie, just to really hammer it in, of this team, the father and son in the movie, have continued to work together, and not always playing father and son, but this trio of family have gone on to make 2 other movies that are important to our podcast, or at least in relation to. So one of the most recent endeavors, literally came out this year, or late last year, was a film that I don't know how to say the title exactly, but Sisu, which was a movie that our dear friend Will was wanting to see all year. He said, oh, if there's a movie I want to see this year, it's this movie. And it's about an old guy played by the dad in this film in Rare Exports, who in Nazi Germany stumbles across some gold and steals the gold and then is chased down by a bunch of Nazis, and he has to slowly kill them one by one.
Okay.
And that's the premise. And it was a really celebrated film, like really good, like gore and action and just intense. And our friend Will was constantly saying through the year, oh, I want to see that movie about the old guy who kills a bunch of Nazis. And I'm like, oh yeah, that looks interesting. And it's the lead guy in that. But the son, his real life son, and the son in this movie is in this film as one of the Nazis he has to go kill.
Wow, okay.
Yep, and it's directed by the director of this and writer of this, and it was one of their most successful films in recent years in Finland. And so this family, they keep coming together. And then the other one that's super important to this movie, the one that I do believe it says on its IMDb trivia was one of the most highest budget, one of the most expensive Finnish films ever created, is called Big Game. And let me read you what this is about, Bartek. It may highlight some memories. A young teenager camping in the woods helps rescue the President of the United States when Air Force One is shot down near his campsite. The President is Samuel L. Jackson. Do you remember this?
From the trivia?
Yep. Do you remember that premise? The idea of the President of the United States is shot down and is lost in the woods, and he's played by Sam Jackson. Do you remember this at all? This is recurring...
Did we do a film?
This is a recurring bit on our show. Whenever we've done a Sam Jackson movie, or at least at some point, I reference that he does everything. Like, Sam Jackson is not fussy. He'll do any movie. And I picked as an example this film. I said, oh, there's a movie that came out where he was the President of the United States and he gets shot down and lost in the woods and a little boy has to help rescue him. And you got so giddy at that premise, and you leaned over in the recording and said, can we add that to the list? That sounds fun. And it's been sitting in one of my old notebooks as like, oh, we should get back around to Big Game.
I think that was many years ago,
yeah,
right? Was that Unappreciated Masterpieces?
Yes, because we mainly did Sam Jackson movies and Unappreciated Masterpieces. But isn't that fun that this team is responsible for a movie that we have mentioned offhandedly a few times over the years, and each time I mention it, you're like, that sounds like a fun idea. That sounds like a fun little idea.
This is 2 Christmases in a row where I pick a non-Hollywood film that ends up having some sort of history to us on Unappreciated Masterpieces.
Isn't that wild and wacky? Both, yeah. But to get back to Rare Exports, there was the thing about this being a family film about exploring their father-son dynamic, but there's a spooky monster out there that's stealing all the other children. And as you were going through earlier, you were having to keep up with the movie, like, you were trying to have to get past through the lore it was giving and the mythos it was giving, and then you get to the end and you can put it all together and you want to maybe perhaps give it a revisit at some point. But as its own thing, outside of just having to pick it apart like that when you're going through it, or like get the pieces into place, as its own thing, what did you think of the movie? Like, did you enjoy it? Did you appreciate the pacing of it, or the overall tone, or even just the premise of it in the end?
Oh, I liked the premise the whole way through, but my full appreciation for it did actually come with finishing off the film. I think one of the reasons why I, very quickly thought, what about a Scandinavian Christmas film, is because whenever you hear about, cultural differences between, typical Western countries and other countries that, like, pique your interest, like, that's a very weird thing. I feel like Scandinavian countries have a lot of them. And, the whole Santa mythos that they have here, I don't know how accurate it is to the most common, Finnish mythos about Santa, but this did feel like, they would have something like this where Santa Claus is a monster and It focuses more on like punishing the naughty rather than rewarding the good. And I do know that there are other European countries that do have their own, weird to us sort of mythos about Santa. Like I think Switzerland has one where Santa has like black servants or black slaves or something, and he kidnaps children or something like that. I can't remember the details of it, but I was happy that when I did pick this film, it did kind of lean into that sort of like cultural difference sensibility. So yeah, that definitely kept me going the whole way through. And yeah, the fact that Santa Claus is a monster in this cultural mythos. It did when the film when we had the opening credits and we were going through a lot of that. It was really building up that sort of anticipation for like, oh, let's see where this goes. Because also we open on the Westerners up in the mountains who are like looking for Santa Claus. And that kind of leaned into this sort of like cultural difference thing where it's like, oh, well, what are these guys getting out of this whole, weird Santa Claus conspiracy slash folklore?
Um, I I had to take a moment to adjust because I was thinking that we were going to have Santa Claus emerge and start killing people, and they would have to fight against Santa Claus. But really, that does not happen. Santa never breaks free. They kill Santa before any of his stuff could come into place. It's more about the slow build, and it doesn't have much scariness to it either. That was something else. I was expecting some more kills, some more gore, some more bloodshed, but it's not in there as much as you would think. And it's not as humorous as I was expecting either, but it has the type of humor that I think is beneficial to this, which is it is playing it as a drama, and that is more inherently amusing than if they did have overt gags. Because there's the two ways you can take this. You can take this the complete absurd silly comedy route and just go full like surrealist crazy nonsense, and that can be brilliant. Look at something like Black Dynamite, for instance. Or you take this in which the funny way to do it is you're just playing it as if this is the most sincere thing possible, and that's what this is doing.
Yeah, this is the other end of the scale to Don't Be a Menace to South Central while drinking your juice in the hood.
Exactly. And it's kind of like Doctor Strangelove in a way, where Doctor Strangelove will have characters be really funny because they're playing it so straight. But then that movie also have characters be funny because they're playing it the exact opposite. Like that's a movie with both in there, and yet it works.
That's a really good comparison because I think that was actually sort of my first experience with Doctor Strangelove, where like when it finished, I was like, oh, thinking back on it, that was actually kind of funny. I want to rewatch that one day. And then long time later, we did it on the podcast, and yeah, I got to have that experience.
Gentlemen, there's no fighting in the war room. But
well, that was always funny.
That was always funny. The president is very funny in that movie, but he's played straight. The one Peter, like two of the three Peter Sellers characters are played completely vanilla, and that's why they're really great. But with Rare Exports, I thought the filmmaking was really well done. It had that very methodical framing of the characters. When it did have what we discover are elves, it shoots them in a genuinely eerie, disturbing way without trying to be gross or shocking or, ooh, it's a horror movie. They really do feel like otherworldly beings, and that's very much needed for what this is. This film on a visual level gets to have the benefit of the snowy landscapes to aid in making it feel like an old folktale coming to life, but it's more than just relying on the landscapes. It's about the color palette, it's about the grading, it's about the lighting, it's about the costuming as well. I thought the costuming was great in this movie. The way that they also had the horror movie scary dolls that you often see, but they are relating it back to what you would imagine is in the Finnish version of the Santa Claus story, where they take the kids and replace them with some weird
these effigies,
the effigies of them. But and of course, Santa Claus has big horns. that is one of those things where it's like, if you know about, like you said, Scandinavian or European versions of this, it's like Krampus is the big one where it's like, yes, the beast with the big horns and the cane, and they cane the kids. They give them a good smack, and that's a part of this movie. They kidnap all these naughty children, and they want to give them a good smack.
Which is... it's also good when we have an evil presence that is alignment wise lawful. Like they follow strict rules, and the heroes can kind of manipulate that. So like the way that the film gets resolved is like, oh, we know how these Santa elves work, so we will use that against them. Or the kid is always reinforcing the fact that while all this horrible stuff is happening, it's like, I've been naughty and they're trying to punish me for this. They're just reinforcing that the fairy tale aspect of the film. So it's the way to make the fairy tale come to life in a really dark way.
My favorite section was when it focused on being a moral dilemma. They have this old man. They just believe him to be some old man. They have some ID for him, but they think he's dead, that he fell into the wolf trap that the father set up at the beginning of the movie, and that he's dead. And the dad brings in one of his friends, and then it becomes a crisis, because it's like, well, the wolf traps are illegal, so you can't just get out of this. So do we dispose of the body? Oh, yes, we have to dispose of the body. We have to make sure the kid doesn't pay attention. Oh, no, the body's still alive and still active, and now he's fighting us, and now we have to bring more people in to help us deal with this. And oh, no, the chief of police is coming into the area because he's looking for the kids, and oh, we have to keep calm. And oh, no, the son is now aware of what's going on. And that was what I really was like glued to the screen of, and I'm not surprised to see, from what little I've read, that the short film lives in that vein a lot more. Like, if you look at the pictures online of the short film, it's of those three hunter guys in that area with blood on them, looking afraid, and it's like, oh yeah, you can tell, like, in the short, that this is the premise. Like, oh no, we found Santa Claus, or what we think is Santa Claus, and do we kill him or not? And I really loved that, and it made me think also of a film that we really loved when we did Mystery Box, called Murder Party, where they're not the same, but they just have, again, that low budget genre feel, and where they take place in very few locations, and thus you have to write a story that's really compelling to justify the limitations of one's budget. And that's also something I really, really was appreciative, like really was just rooting for this film, was you can see they had limitations, but they worked within them, and it gets to a point where it doesn't matter. And I thought they just had that scrappy charm that you see in underdog stories like Ed Wood, for instance, where it's like Ed Wood, the filmmaker, and his ragtag bunch of misfits try to make a movie, but the joke in Ed Wood is that he's a terrible filmmaker and he's not very good at it. But in this real life story, it's like you've got a very good filmmaker and you've got great actors and you've got a fun little idea, and that's enough. And that's enough. And I found that at times I was a little bit disengaged with the movie because I could feel the padding of it. But once it was all wrapped up and concluded, I also had that similar thing to you, where perhaps on a revisit, this would go down a little smoother now that I know what I'm really in for, because I had certain expectations of what was a movie that was really talked about in my circle when it came out, and I had a picture in my mind of what this would be, and it wasn't that. And what I did get was something that was aiming for what it hit.
Yeah, you mentioned like the part that you were most engaged in was, when you had the moral dilemma, which is sort of like the middle-ish second half, just part of the film. The second half of this film really did land pretty well for me. And I guess that means that while I was watching it, like I guess the first half I was still waiting for it to show its hand. Yeah, it would be interesting to rewatch with like a group, I reckon.
Very
Have like
much.
multiple voices, commenting on the film as we're watching it, sort of thing, seeing what works. Like I was thinking, with the whole me taking the family drama aspect at face value, I was wondering if like, if I was watching it with a group, I might be more inclined to laugh at like, oh, that was a bit of an awkward interaction there, and maybe, the comedy would come out a bit more naturally that way.
Perhaps. With all of this talk about Santa Claus and the whole ethos and mythos and everything around him within the Finnish culture, but also what is presented in this movie. Because again, this is a film; they have to do their version of things. They have to give their look on it, and also have our characters mold it themselves. Because one of the things I found really, really striking and unique about this was everyone involved, all the major players, once they knew what it was, oh, it's Santa Claus and it's this mythical beast that's going to kill us all if we're bad. How can I profit off of this? And it wasn't like discerned to, oh, only the villains think that way. No, our heroes think that way too because they've got to earn some scratch.
Yeah, and they've already lost a lot of opportunity to earn money thanks to the conflict.
What did you think of that addition to this? Because it could have stayed just being, oh, it's the family, the father and son, and oh, the smaller community having to band together to save the community and themselves and their children against this insidious force. But instead, like all of that stuff is secondary to, how can we make profit off of this?
I really liked the aspect of there is a very specific amount of money that, that they really want to get because that's what they feel entitled to. It's like $85,000. Because early on in the film, they see that, what were they hunting again? It wasn't mooses, it was a reindeer. They see that there is like, oh, I think it was like 400 and something reindeer just all dead in this big ass field near a border. And they ask one of them who's good at maths, like, oh man, would this how much would we have earned if we had gotten all this? It was like $85,000. And then throughout the film that number gets repeated where it's like, oh, they're currently holding this potential Santa Claus at a ransom. Ask for $85,000. And one of the others is like, why don't we ask for $1 million? It's like, no, $85,000.
Yeah, don't be greedy now.
Be greedy now. And then I think at the end of the film, when
Mm-hmm.
they've gathered up all the Santa helpers, they use that value and then like multiply it to get a new value of profit. So it's like that 85,000 variable is always the variable that they're working with because that's what they feel entitled to and that's what they're basing their eventual reward on.
I think it is just such a. It's obviously a joke and it's very funny, but I am just in awe that there is no moral judgment bullshit about how they want to capitalize off of this. If this was again a Hollywood picture, that would be. I think what's another one I think of.
Or
Small
you thinking of,
Soldiers.
oh, okay, that's different from what I was thinking. Yep.
What did you say?
I was thinking of a specific Lemonade Joe comparison
Oh
at the
yes,
end.
no, a Western film, not a Western cowboy, but a Western made movie. Small
Yep.
Soldiers. It's like, oh no, we're getting attacked by toys. But how? But you'll have Phil Hartman be like, but how can we profit off of them? And it's treated like that's funny, but it's bad. You shouldn't think like that. You should want to protect the good toys and kill those evil toys. And this movie's just just doesn't give a shit about that usual complaint within the thesis statement of a movie that greed is bad and we should kill it, and even the little guy struggling shouldn't strive to want excess in funds. But here they don't. No, the joke is, it's like, you could ask for more. No, 85,000 seems pretty reasonable. And then at the end, it's like 16 million. And they don't react in ways that you would expect. Like, for instance, when they think this old man is just an old man and he's like bitten one of them in the face and they're afraid of him, like he just bit through something and they're really upset by him. And the child, our lead child, walks into the room and the old man starts responding to him. The dad grabs the kid and throws him in front of the old man to see what would happen. That was
like, do you know this man?
Yeah, do you know this? And I'm like, that's not how I would be responding to this.
Yeah, there was a really funny contrast, because throughout the film, I mentioned before, like, the constant thing with the kid is like, just stay there, stand back. Did you hear me? Stand back. And then, like, the father starts moving forward and the kid starts following, and it's like, okay, he's not able to control the kid like that. But now here we've got the opposite, where he, like, thrusts the kid forward towards the danger.
And that happens throughout, where these adults are so reckless, but the film is still on their side. There is no wagging of the finger of the dad in that moment. The movie is in fact being like, the dad's doing a good thing right now, which is interesting. Like, I don't know what to make of that, if that's just the movie's sensibilities, or if this is just a different cultural thing, or if it's a joke in itself. But I just really was just happy with how the film continuously kept doing things like that, with just the emphasis on money, or how they treated the children, or how they reacted to the Santa's little helpers, where they stopped being afraid of them very quickly. Like, there was moments where they were afraid, but then once they came to terms with what was going on, they just got in fight mode. They were no longer in flight mode. They're like, okay, this is how we deal with them. Let's kick their ass.
Yeah, the whole moral aspect too. It's reminding me of when we did, I believe it was last year's Spooky Month, The Trip.
Oh yes, I thought about that.
Yeah, where, throughout that film there is very much like this danger, like, home invasions happening, our lives are, under threat, and then the film ends and it becomes very capitalistic, like, oh, let's profit off of what just happened.
Yeah. And let's demystify our villain. Because this movie,
let's Hollywood him.
Yeah, this movie's all about building up that slow dread, and then by the end, let's just corral them and shave them and clean them and just sell them.
Yeah, mole Santa them.
This mole Santa these ghouls. That was a crazy moment in the movie. I was just like, and they play it so slowly. Like, the end of the movie is so slow and meticulous, of they're going down the line and you see what it is, the visual storytelling, and their father and son just looking at these old men and just smacking them and being like, no, not that. And just it was, and you're having to piece together, like, oh, they've made a little business out of it.
Yeah, I remember the shot of when the father had the kid on his lap and they're like smiling and he was hugging him and wearing the Santa hat. That was reminding me of the ending of Lemonade Joe, which was also sort of, parodying the ultimate happy ending of like, oh, look, everything's going well for them. Oh, look, and now they've struck oil. Oh, now this is happening, and now this is happening. It just reminded me of that, where it's like, oh, the whole film, the story is done now. This is the new thing. This is the capitalist venture that we've started.
Is there much else you want to go over, examine, highlight with Rare Exports?
You mentioned that this is, sort of based on a 4-minute short that they made early in the 2000s. The trivia that I was reading, and I guess this is a different thing, is that this is sort of a prequel to a series of short films that they made, which is based on the Mole Santa plot at the end of this film.
Oh, okay.
Did you read that?
No, I just saw on IMDb, when you get that, like, here's a thing similar to, It
Mm-hmm.
had rare exports, and it was like a 4-minute short about hunters in the woods who find a Santa Claus, and that
Okay,
was like the
yeah.
premise. And I'm like, oh, that's like this movie's middle chunk.
Yeah, I was reading somewhere that there was a series of short films that they made that was based on like the mole Santa thing, and this, in a weird way, is like a prequely origin story to that. Maybe I'm
Look,
misremembering.
there's a rare exports cinematic universe we have yet to be fully ingratiated with. Were you okay with Santa, the big monster that was threatened and perhaps even promised during the film that he did not get to appear? Really?
Well, I did like the twist that even though we did get the lore dump during the opening credits of like, oh, this Santa's like this monstery thing. I did like the eventual twist of like, oh no, he's a gigantic monster that like these natives once defeated. I did like that twist to it, and and seeing the spectacle of the big chunk of ice with the horns coming out of it was cool. In terms of, was I bothered by the fact that he didn't like defrost and end up being the main threat? No, I didn't really mind that. I thought that the sort of mystique around him was enough, and the fact that he was taken down by, you know, 3 hunters with dynamite, you know, that sat well with me.
A gag early on that I found very good was the opening scene about the rich guy finding out that they have found it, and then he gives like the safety instruction booklets, and it's like all of these like affirmation, like wash behind your
Yeah,
ears,
all these good
all
platitudes,
these good things, and the guy just being like, this is fucking stupid.
things that mum and dad would tell you to do.
And then it doesn't work because the rich guy still gets killed by one of Santa's. Oh, and the gag about defeating Santa's little helpers or getting past them is by throwing them gingerbread men, little
Yeah,
cookies.
I like
Like,
that. I also like that recurring aspect of it, where it's like, oh, the father only really makes gingerbread cookies, and like it's like, oh, you need to eat your meal. It's like, I had my gingerbread cookie. Well, I have another one, and then his friend is the one eating it, and that like gets a reaction out of the potential dead Santa. And
mm.
the gingerbread cookies were very important, much like the rise and fall of Baal with the cookies.
And this is something too where none of our like heroic characters die.
Yeah, that's true.
They all live. Like the kids obviously live, but all of the adults, even the cop that was in this movie for a brief moment. It's only the evildoers that get killed. There is no. This isn't like Tremors where everyone is up for grabs. It's a movie where the good guys genuinely come out okay.
Yeah, I did like that aspect as well, because yeah, I mean, one of them lost an ear, I guess.
Yeah, but still, what's it?
Yeah,
Yeah, did he lose his ear? I knew he got bit on the side of the face, but yes.
I thought his ear got bitten off because he was leaning in, like, oh, is this guy trying to say something? And then the guy like leaned
Oh
forward
yeah,
and bit. So
but he lived, and he was a big hero. He drove the
he was a
helicopter.
helicopter pilot. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah. Again, like all of our main guy. I like the one who can speak English, and he only does it for like machismo action lines.
yeah, yeah. Like if you showed all his scenes of speaking English out of context, you would think that he was like a bad guy henchman.
Or like a Jean-Claude Van Damme type.
Yeah.
Like you don't mess with our town. And I like he was doing his like pseudo-American accent on top of it, like it wasn't just, oh, he's just speaking. Yeah, all of them were great. Like all the adult characters were good. I enjoyed
all
them.
three of them brought something to it.
I even like I bring him up a lot, but I did like that the cop that came in briefly. I was like, hey, this guy's fun. I kind of wish he was in the movie more. He's just one of those actors where it's like, oh, this guy has a look. He has a look and an energy to him. Like I don't know who he is, but I imagine he's like a Finnish character actor man. He's the Stephen Root of Finland, is what I'll say. But that's rare exports. I did enjoy it. It's not one of my favorites, and when I watched it last night, I was middling on it. I was like, oh, it has some things to appreciate, some things not so much. But now getting to talk about it and getting to look at it overall and think about it too as like a holiday film, it really did give more than it needed to. It could have just been a lazy film. It could have just been content with being a film shot at night in a snowy location with their characters walking around, muttering to themselves and getting picked off one by some ghouls, and then at the end they kill the ghouls and that's it. But it doesn't do that. There's just more stuff that's put into this than you may have expected.
I'm pretty much the same way. Yeah, I appreciated it more when it ended and appreciate it more talking about it now, getting all our thoughts out there. And yeah, highlighting things that I hadn't thought about.
And that is our discussion on rare exports. I do recommend it. I say check it out.
Yeah. Check it out. I think this would be fun to watch with a group too. So
I
maybe
would
get
hope
some
so.
friends together, yeah.
I think it's one where it's like, it's a little bit more on the dry side, but give it a chance. Like,
Yeah.
this
See it
isn't,
through.
yeah, this isn't as like crowd pleasingly wonderful as say like a One Cut of the Dead, but they both have that community. Yay, we came together and did a thing, and that's always something to be like just give a clap to, and just have a cheer about. But
Yeah, all of the films you were comparing it to, I did enjoy those films too, so that's a good sign.
but that is our discussion, and that's our final episode of the year. Isn't
Hmm.
that crazy?
Yeah, it's been a whole year since we finished a year.
But how do you feel about how everything went in 2023, whether just in general or just the podcast stuff?
Yeah, last night I was actually looking through our catalog for this year, and I we went like many months in a row where I like really enjoyed almost every film we watched.
Yeah, I'm trying to recall if there was. I did not look like you did, but I'm trying to recall if there was many movies this year that I was like, I hated that. Not so much. There was ones like we just did Last of the Mohicans that I was just meh
Yeah,
about, but there was lots of, and I think we had an eclectic taste. I tried to inject a lot more animated films throughout
yeah.
the year.
You stated very early on that that was going to be a goal of yours, and yeah, we had quite a number of those. Like even one of our guests recommended like Son of the White Mare. I'm seeing here.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Yeah, and I think we had the surprising mix of movies that one of us may not have enjoyed, but the other did, and then we discussed it, and we got to really bring out something in the movie that wasn't like as obvious when we were watching it. Like I liked the mission, but I
Mm.
liked it even more when we got to talk about it, and even like we did our Polish movie. We
Yeah,
finally did one,
finally the one that
and
I was thinking of too.
and that was one where again like I was just scratching my head at it at times, but we got to break it down and got to do that. And heck, we even did a Tyler Perry movie this year. We did Don't Look Up, a movie that I expected I would loathe and hate, but actually didn't mind too much.
Yeah,
So
I'm looking at the list now, and like in August we did Terminal Velocity, and that was an okay film. But like looking down the list, like oh, that's the first one where I was kind of on it.
yeah. So that is it. It is my turn for the recommendation. I'm starting up what we're going to be launching into for 2024. And I'm going to give us a foreign film as well. It's going to be one that's on a little bit of the longer side, like 2 hours and 20 something minutes long, or maybe 2.5. I haven't double checked, but
Oh,
I
that's
saw
okay.
this one in the cinema and it was
Hmm.
up for some important stuff. It didn't get any, I don't think it got an Oscar nomination, sadly, but we're going to revisit a director of note with his film Decision to Leave. This is by the same director who did The Handmaiden
Okay.
and Old Boy and so on and so on. This is his most recent film, Park Chan-wook, who did Decision to Leave, a movie It's I won't give too much away, but I'm very keen on giving it a revisit. I very much enjoyed it when I saw it in the cinema. I own this on Blu-ray. Haven't watched it since that cinema experience. I saw it with my wife and a couple of friends, and I was the one who liked it.
The one who liked it.
Yeah, I think Rachel enjoyed it well enough. Like it's got some funny stuff. And,
did you see this one with Mark?
Yes, I saw it with former housemate Mark and his
Mark
Mark 2, Mark 3, and his girlfriend. And yes, this will be a curious one to
vaguely
talk
remember
about.
you talking about this and the fact that they didn't like it. Yeah.
Yeah, the one thing I think I remember talking to you about very recently, and now it's kind of escaped me, is I think like the lead actress in this movie, like her whole thing is I think she's like from Japan or from somewhere else, and she had to learn Korean because it's a whole bunch of that. We'll talk about it when we get there, but Decision to Leave is the film we will be going through. So everyone, please make sure in the interim of time to check it out. When will we be back? Within the early part of January, similar to last year. I would expect maybe the second week of January. We're going to take some time off for the holidays, enjoy New Year's, kick our feet up and just sit back and relax. And then we'll be back to talking about those wacky movies. What do you think will be a major recurring thing in 2024 when it comes to the movies we watch, Bartek? Do you have any guesses? What do you think will be a thing that could recur, whether it's a particular genre or style of movie or actor or anything? Do you have any gut feelings?
I don't. Did we have one this year?
Well, other than we did have animated come up a bunch.
Yeah.
I feel like 2024 will be the year of Giamatti.
What, a lot of anniversaries?
We have one.
We do have one. We're going to have 400 soon, I think.
Yes, we are. We have to keep an eye on that. Wouldn't it be wild if we just kept having a Giamatti month? No, I honestly don't know. I'm hoping that we have musicals. I'm like, man, I kind of miss doing musicals. Like,
hey, we'll do Baz Luhrmann month.
Did you know? We've got to wrap this up. But did you know Australia, the film by Baz Luhrmann, has been broken up into a TV series on Disney Plus?
I think you've said this before.
Yeah, they're trying to sell it off as a new thing. Like, hey, do you want to watch this drama? And it's like, no, it's just Australia, the film. But since Australia, the film was so long, you can break it up into multiple episodes. But the thing is, the film's not made that way. You fucks.
I remember them showing us the trailer for that in a university class. Like, what's wrong with this trailer?
And what was wrong with it, Bartek?
Well, here's a film celebrating Australia, and it's a Hollywood film. Or something like that.
Oh, yes. Here's a film where the Aboriginals have a mystical king who emerges from the smoke in every scene he's in. Ooh, mystical. Magic.
This musical theme for next year, is that what we would call a promise?
Oh, Bartek, you said that there was a promise that had to be kept in this episode, and I can't recall what it was.
So, in the very first episode of this year, Tears of the Black Tiger, I jokingly said, like, oh, at the end of this year, for the final episode, Ryan will sing for us. And the promise that I have to keep is that I have to listen to you sing. But seeing as you're sick, I'm kind of feeling guilty about that.
You should be sick. No way. Reproduction. Oh man, Grease 2 still lives in my head, baby. Let's bowl, let's rock and roll.
Okay, we'll do Grease 1 next year.
Please, I've done nothing wrong. It does have Kaneki. So
it does, yeah. We like Jeff Conaway.
I love Jeff Conaway. I miss that guy. He's my favorite child star.
Yeah, child model.
Nope. But in the meantime, we can be found on some social medias under I was going to say Yum Yum Podcast. That's my other one. We can be found under some social medias with Spit and Polish Presents. You can email us if you want to contact us directly or give us recommendations for movies. Yes, we take your recommendations, we put them in the list, and we go through them. And if you want to fulfill the 2024 promise of some more musicals, then you could pitch musicals our way, or not. You don't have to. If you want to give us an expressionist German film or whatever the case may be, as long as we can find it, we'll do it. Just hit us up at our email address, which is
spitandpolished@gmail.com.
Ah, there we go. All of this is in the description below, and if you have not rated and reviewed the podcast, you're a naughty, naughty boy or girl, and we're going to give you a good smack on the bottom. That's right. Smack on the bottom. I said it.
Naughty Boy musical, Life of Brian. There's an idea.
Oh, there you go. There's one. Write that down. We haven't done a Monty Python.
Not a big fan of Monty Python, but...
You are not. I know this. I gave Bartek, when the pandemic started, a copy of a series that I dearly love called Ripping Yarns by Michael Palin and Terry Jones of the Monty Python things, and he watched a single episode and said he enjoyed it and then never touched it again. It's still at his place, gathering dust.
I'm touching it right now.
You should watch some. Perhaps that's your Christmas gift to me, is watching a thing I give you. You did that with Babylon 5. But everyone, thank you so much for following us and tuning in during all of this, and we hope that you join us again. Enjoy the holiday season and the end of the year, and hopefully the new one will bring about so much kooky, wonderful stuff for you all. But until next time, remember to be kind to each other, or else Santa Claus will get you.
Dude, you were being all uplifting and then you said something fucked up at the end. Why'd you do that?
Did I do that? See, that's a callback to Big Fat Liar.
No, not Giamatti. Fucking Jaleel White.
That sounds
Jaleel
like
White year.
It sounds like Giamatti, Jaleel White, Giamatti.
Have they ever been in a film together?
Other than Big Fat Liar? I hope so.
What's Big Fat Liar? I don't know. Let's do that. We should do Big Fat Liar too.
With Barry Bostwick? Yes, please.